Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 3DO Experience, the 3DO Retrospective Podcast, where we talk about the 3DO console, the company behind it, and everything in between. I'm Bill, and this is Threk. How you doing, Threk?
Oh, hello, Bill. I'm doing just fine. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. It's winter. I know we're on opposite sides of the debate here, but I hate the snow. So
See, I'm all about the winter. I love the cold. I thrive in it. Makes me feel good. So it's good. It's good shit, man.
yeah, I almost got run off the road because someone decided to merge into traffic in a snowstorm. That's always fun shit when people just
See, I almost got hit today as well. I was coming home. Roads were clear, and I was driving next to like a semi, about like halfway, like kind of in the middle, and he starts going over to the right, and I'm on his right lane. And I never like honk the horn. That's never anything I do, but I did, and it didn't do anything. So, in just the kind of moment of I have to do something, I just kind of moved over to the right, off of I forget what it's called, but like the little bumps that they have,
rumble strip.
the rumble strip. Yeah, I went beyond that just so I wouldn't die. And thankfully, the exit I needed was just straight ahead, so I didn't have to stay on it for too long. But yeah, dickhead. But but it happens. Whatever. Like this morning, the roads weren't great, and there was some dude in a Challenger going like 80, and just like
Yep.
passing everybody. I'm like, bro, this ain't the weather for that. Okay, like, calm down. But people don't know how to drive in the snow.
No.
They don't know.
See, the thing we have up here that drives me nuts is we get the people that are going like 10 in the fast lane, just holding everybody up. So you're constantly having traffic like fan out and stuff. And it's like, this is just going to cause a bigger accident in the long run.
I'd rather people go slow in the snow because at least then nobody's gonna get hurt.
See, there's slow, and then there's like so slow that you're going to cause an accident because it's like just like 20 below like what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, that's true.
Like at that point, just stay in the slow lane. Like I don't get why he's got to be in the fast lane. Like that's just
Because that's where they turn. Usually, that's where they have to go. But it is what it is.
yeah. It was just like people. As much of a pain in the ass as it might be, I'm a strong like believer that the license, like the road test, should be something that's retaken every couple of years.
No, I'm completely for that. Like every 10 years, you have to take it again.
Yeah, 10 sounds good.
Yeah.
They'll never do it, but
No, because it would impede on people's freedoms or some stupid bullshit. I don't know. Doesn't make any sense to me. But this ain't a political podcast. Now, before we get started on today's topic, I guess a little. I got something today, 3DO related, something about what we've talked about before, and something to kind of preview what will happen in the future. But I have it. I got the boy.
oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, it's chunkier than I thought it would be.
Yes, I imported him from Japan. For our audio listeners, I got the 3DO Capcom Fighting Pad. I'm assuming that's what it's called. It wasn't made just for the 3DO. There's a version for Sega Genesis. I think there's like a Neo Geo one as well. And as far as I know, it is the only Capcom made like piece of hardware ever. And yes, this will be for our eventual Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo video. I did get a copy of it the other day. I got it pretty bare, but the problem is the disc does not work. I don't know if it'll show up on the camera, but there is one pretty gnarly scratch on it, and I did what I could to try to get it out. Didn't work. I asked the guy about it. He said he never tested it, but he ended up refunding me anyways, which was very nice. I was planning to just return it to him, but I've luckily that same day I found another copy with the manual and everything for just a little bit more than I paid for that one. Like surprisingly not that bad. So that one is on the way. And I've messed with this guy a little bit, the fighting pad. And
I've never actually seen the back before. The grip actually looks like it's pretty comfortable. For what
the back for the D-pad is very ergonomic. Like it looks like a face if you see it, but it's very ergonomic. Like it just kind of naturally, your fingers just kind of naturally rest in the grooves, right? And so for the left side with the D-pad, it feels pretty nice. I mean, the pause basically start and select, are a little out of the way, but not too bad. The one I need a little bit of getting used to is where the buttons sit. You know, it's not bad. It's better than you'd think. Like I was actually playing a little bit of the game for next week with this, just try to get a feel for it. You know, and it's a little weird, but you know the left is very nice. It's just the right. And weirdly enough, I saw a YouTube short of somebody doing this, but they were playing it like this with their fingers.
I like an
the-
arcade.
yeah, and I'm like, I don't think that's what they were going for. I mean, who knows? But and it's got a really nice like laser etch Capcom on the bottom, which is really cool.
I'm gonna have to track one of those down at some point.
Yes, I paid the amount of dollars for it. I don't want to say. I had to import it from Japan, but I got here a lot quicker than I expected. So yes, for our eventual Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo review, aka I'm not good at fighting games, I will play it with this guy, and we'll let you know how it is. But figured
I
just
found a shitty third-party controller too, so I'm going to see how that works.
That's sick. And for some reason, the extension or the cord, right? It has this your normal 3DO plug, but for some reason it splits off and it has like an inverted version of the 3DO.
That must be the multiplayer port.
I guess. I mean,
because there's none on the controller, I'm guessing.
Oh yeah. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, because they're the same.
Yeah. So
yeah. Oh, that makes sense. I didn't think about that.
When you said it's inverted, I was like, why would they? I'm like, oh, it's got to be the multiplayer. Like,
yeah,
because 3DOs are dumb like that.
Yes. Yeah. So it's like a weird spider web. But you know, and though mine's kind of rusty, so it might not work. But who fucking cares, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, also, I got the funny little 3D fighting pad. When we do the Street Fighter 2 video, you'll get a more detailed review of this guy because that's what it was made for. So stay tuned, kiddos.
Good to know. We'll get to that one eventually. I also heard recently, I believe somebody from from another server that I'm in, he had pre-ordered the Plumbers Don't Wear Ties re-release, and apparently it's coming out shortly.
Oh, that's good. Well, the digital's coming out in March. So
they must be sending out the physicals early.
Well, that got the one time I didn't fucking order one, and we get it early because, of course.
So I guess that means that's going to be coming in the future.
March 5th is when it comes out officially. So expect within the next week or two a detailed review, because I imagine Bill here will be playing the original version, and I will be playing the definitive edition on the Series X because why not, right? I have a very powerful Xbox console over here. It's got loads of amazing games to play, and I choose Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. I'll try to get every achievement. I will try to explore the vastness of this release just for you guys, because I don't know. I don't know why.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to say about that game, and we'll save it for when we get there.
I'm a journalist. I'm a 3DO journalist.
Honestly, I'm more interested in the history of that game than the game itself, because there has to be history, but I've got to dig into it.
Well, the re-release, as far as I know, has a bunch of like interviews with people who were around for the game and everything. So there's going to be a lot of history and other things crammed into that version. So because there's like a dungeon crawler mode.
Yeah, I don't get that. I'm still a little.
I think it's because they realized, oh, we actually need a game on here.
Yeah.
So
not a 20-second slideshow.
Yeah, but I'll let you know how substantial it is one way or the other. So
I mean, I might pick it up anyways just to have.
Yeah, I should have grabbed the Xbox version just to own it, but I highly doubt that's going to be one of the versions that like you don't see at Best Buy. Like I don't see that. I mean, Best Buy is apparently getting rid of their physical games anyway, so.
Yep. Speaking of that, did you see Ubisoft's new controversial take?
No, I didn't. What did they say?
CEO of Ubisoft is under the impression now that gamers should just get used to not owning their games in the future.
Weren't they the ones that pulled a game from Steam? And
I
if you had it in your library, it disappeared.
It might have been them.
Yeah.
I saw that. Like, I was kind of like, I get it. That's probably going to be the future at some point, but I'm going to be the strict physical gamer who's like stubborn to the end. So
It helps that with the PC structure with Steam and GOG, like Valve and CD Projekt have done a good job of making sure that if you bought a game from them, you're good. You know, I mean, there are fringe cases like with Ubisoft, but I'm pretty sure Valve and CD Projekt do their best to make sure you keep those. And hopefully Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo will attempt the same in their console libraries. I get why people are concerned. I do. But for me with Xbox, I feel a little bit more comfortable because when I got back into the ecosystem, I used my old Xbox Live account, like username and password. I'm surprised I still remembered it, but everything was there. And the games that I had bought 15 plus years ago were still available. I didn't have to rebuy them, which was fantastic. So if Microsoft keeps that going and hopefully Sony and Nintendo do the same, I think an all digital future would be fine. As long as when people buy the games, the account remembers that they own those games and they can carry them forward. That's what people want. They just want to be able to know that the games will always be there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting thing for the future. I think Ubisoft is just like, they're jealous of like all the other companies being hated and they want to be the most hated company in gaming now or something. I don't know.
Ubisoft's always just kind of there,
Ubisoft,
just,
whenever I think Ubisoft, I think like Rayman. I think
Prince of Persia.
Obviously Prince of Persia, Rayman, Assassin's Creed, like all of their.
Well, I've heard I've heard the new Prince of Persia is really good. People are really enjoying it. Yeah, I threw it on the wish list. I'm gonna wait till it's. I mean, $50 isn't bad for that, but when it hits like 30, I'll probably grab it because it looks really cool. It's kind of Metroidvania-y. I've heard some people compare it very favorably to Metroid Dread, another really great Metroidvania that came out recently. It's weird calling that a Metroidvania, but yeah. So I guess Ubisoft, they did something good. So they're like, oh shit, we have to rebalance the force. So we'll do something bad.
Yeah. See, when I think Ubisoft, I just think of their batshit insane E3 presentations for all the years. Like, I'll never forget Mr. Caffeine. That guy was on crack, I swear.
All those Just Dance bits where they would just get people to go on and dance to
My favorite was Just Dance 2021, I think, still had the Wii logo up there, and I was like, bastard will never die.
Yeah. Very, very strange.
It had Wii and Switch, but no Wii U. It was just like, what?
Well, it's because nobody gave a shit about the Wii U anymore.
No. I just thought that was always funny.
And if I remember correctly, Ubisoft said they would still make Just Dance for the Wii if they could, but Nintendo put all of their Wii certification stuff in the closet. So they're like, yeah, we're done. We're done certifying Wii titles. Otherwise, Ubisoft would still be doing it, which I get. It was the perfect platform for it.
It was cheap I think no one cared about the graphics.
And I think all of us played a Just Dance game on the Wii, if we had a Wii,
I'm pretty sure most parties back in the day, it was always on the Wii just because it was the cheapest way to get it.
Yeah, Just Dance on the Wii, like Guitar Hero, all those rhythm games are very popular for parties, So, and my girlfriend at the time loved Just Dance, so me and her used to play it all the time.
It's a fun game. Like, I'll give Ubisoft credit when they make a great series. They make a good series.
Yeah, they milk the shit out of it. Like, I'm still playing Assassin's Creed Syndicate. I've taken a little break from it, but it's a very good game. One of my favorites in the series. So
I'll give Ubisoft credit. They milk their series, but they're better than Activision in terms of at least keeping them alive.
Yeah, and like Assassin's Creed is surprisingly a more consistent series in terms of quality than you'd think. Like barring Donkey's opinion aside, because I think a lot of people just kind of assume his opinion without playing games. I mean, Donkey's allowed to not like Assassin's Creed. That's fine. But in my experience with them, I'm like, these games are a lot better than I kind of expected, So it's fine with me. But yeah, they need to calm down on that annual release because it seems like they want to keep doing that. Like they'll do the annual release, people say stop, then they cool it down for a little bit, and then when people start liking them again, they ramp it up, and it's like,
Yeah.
guys, just stop.
I think the perfect example of how like yearly releases are are pretty detrimental is like look at Sonic right now. Like they finally took a fucking break and like we've had like 3 pretty good Sonic games in a row. So
But then you have exceptions like the Resident Evil series, which has been yearly for quite a while now, and it feels like the quality's only gotten better.
yeah,
But
they're an
that
interesting one.
yeah, but that's Capcom. Capcom have figured their shit out, whereas I don't think Ubisoft will ever figure their shit out. You know what I mean?
Ubisoft's too
They're too big.
yeah.
Yeah, like Capcom isn't that big as far as like a giant gaming conglomerate or anything. Like they're big, but they're not like they're not like Activision sized.
See, what gets me with Ubisoft is it's like they are massive, but like 80% of their games all come from one of their studios.
But they have all their other studios helping out.
Yeah.
So if you ever look at say like Ghost Recon Wildlands or whatever, it'll say, "Oh, Ubisoft Montreal," and then it'll say, "Oh, with help from all of their other studios," which is probably why they're able to churn out the games that they do so quickly because they have like thousands of people working on these games all the time and surprisingly decent quality.
I still find it really interesting that like Ubisoft's main studio barely does anything anymore.
Montreal.
No, the Montpellier, like French studio, the one that does like Rayman and
Oh
stuff.
yeah. Well, didn't they do this new Prince of Persia?
I think they might have actually. This might be the first thing they've done in a while.
Yeah, because they did the Rayman Legends games,
They've
weren't
done
they? Weren't they part of like the Ubi Arts program? The
they're
short-lived program of like Ubisoft being like, "Oh, do weird shit, guys," but it didn't last.
they're like the original Ubisoft studio. Like they made the original Rayman. They've made all the Raymans actually.
Yep, Ubisoft Montpellier, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown.
Nice. I'm glad they're actually making good stuff again because they went through a rough period there for a while. You know what's funny? You know what like Montreal's like first game was, or at least one of their first games?
Well, it was Rayman.
Well, it was actually a Tonic Trouble. You remember that game?
I do not. I've never heard of it.
It was like another game that was Rayman like, but more like wacky and out there.
Mhm.
It came out after Rayman 1, but before Rayman 2. I think it was more they were just kind of experimenting with how to make a 3D game.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, they also did Valiant Hearts: The Great War. I played that game. That was a neat little game. They also did Zombie U, which was fine. Yeah, Rayman Origins, Rayman Legends, and this is probably the issue with them is that they did Beyond Good and Evil 1, and they're working on Beyond Good and Evil 2.
Yeah, and
That's the problem. The game the new Duke Nukem Forever, the game that'll probably never come out. Though if this game does come out, it'll probably be better than Duke Nukem Forever.
Yeah, and Duke Nukem Forever isn't that bad when you
It's
take
not
it
that
into.
good. It's not that good either.
No, it's a game from 1996. Like I mean,
it's one of the most bland first-person shooters I've ever played. Which for a Duke Nukem game, that's a crime.
Yeah, I mean,
Duke Nukem 3D holds up way better than it should. Like it is dated as hell as far as like all the weird stuff, but you play the game and it's part of like that boomer shooter genre, I guess. It's one of the better ones.
Yeah, I always like I just I mean I'll get with people behind people when they say it hasn't held up well and it isn't a great game in terms of that, but like what I disagree with is the people that say Forever failed to do what they promised because I'm like, no, it did everything they promised. It just took forever to come out.
If that game came out in like I think it was the 2001 trailer that had like it was Vegas
The one that
and
looked
everything.
amazing.
Yeah, if the game came out then, it would be considered a classic.
I love how they take blatant digs at like Halo, and it's like, yeah, wait, that doesn't hold up very well.
Yeah, I assume you've watched the Matt McMuscles video on Duke Nukem Forever.
Oh yeah,
yeah. For those of you who haven't, Matt McMuscles, formerly of Two Best Friends, Super Best Friends, R.I.P. has a YouTube channel, and he has a big series called What Happened, where he takes a look at infamous gaming blunders and gets to the bottom of it. Some of the videos are better. I think the more game-centric ones are really good. Like when he did ones on like consoles or like WCW or whatever, it felt like he was kind of fast tracking a lot of the issues, but there's a lot to tell with those. But it's more game centric ones like Duke Nukem Forever, and there's a couple of others are really, really good. So they are well worth watching. And also watch some old Two Best Friends highlights, though. That shit holds up. Those two were really funny.
Yeah. Yeah, I forgot about Two Best Friends.
Love them. I like them more in Game Grumps.
My favorite was the collab they did with Game Grumps, just because
that stuff was good.
Dan and Aaron worked surprisingly well with Matt and Wooly.
Yeah, good old Wooly. We all love Wooly. Wooly and Liam. But yeah. I loved watching their wrestling stuff because they know so much about wrestling, and it was so funny. Like them mixing wrestling and anime lore was always like really, really funny.
Yeah. No, those guys. That was a time for YouTube that just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, it's a shame Matt and Pat hate each other.
Yeah, I mean they were both very abrasive guys, though, so it kind of made sense.
Yeah, I might be exaggerating it, but if I remember when they did the ending video, Wooly said they're not friends anymore.
No, it's pretty clear if you listen to I think the Super Best Friends podcast still exists, but it's like called like Castle Super Beast now or something.
Yeah,
if you listen to that, it's pretty clear they don't like each other.
Yeah, because I think Wooly is still friends with all of them because he's Wooly. Who doesn't love Wooly? Yeah. And I imagine I think Liam took like Matt's side, I guess.
But yeah, again, he's on Matt's channel all the time.
Yeah, and Wooly's on Pat's show all the time. So,
but Wooly's also on Matt's show all the time. So it's kind of like
who doesn't love Wooly? If you guys haven't, there's a famous. I think it went viral. Of Wooly when they were at a game store and somebody filmed, and I think it was like Matt was filming him, and he'd said he like met up with two girls and like things were going well, but he ditched them to go to the store to get what was it, Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite or whatever. Something like that. It's really funny, really funny.
Nice.
Well, so anyways, what are we here for today, Bill? We're just shooting the shit. When's Marvel?
We're 23 minutes in and we haven't even got to the topic yet.
They've all clicked off at this point.
So if you video listeners or video watchers are paying attention, if you couldn't tell by Thrax's subtitle there, we're actually going to be talking about EA, Electronic Arts.
Yes, the famed evil giant corporation of the video game industry that does all the bad stuff,
Yeah, it's funny how
like they famously voted like the worst company in America like 2 years in a row.
Yeah, and it's funny looking back. I'm still kind of wondering why. Like I've always been like, I'm like EA. They've done some things, but I mean, with the shit that Activision, Blizzard, and all these other companies have come out with, I'm like EA's stuff really isn't that bad in hindsight anymore.
As far as I know, EA never did like Activision level bad stuff. As far as I know, I could be completely wrong.
The thing EA gets so much crap for is their tendency to buy
nickel and dime you.
That I mean, a lot of them do that now, though.
But EA was so like upfront about it.
Yeah,
they were the one that did the Battle Pass, wasn't it? Like during the 360 era, like if you bought Mass Effect 3, right? And it's like, oh, if this is a used copy, you have to pay $10 to play the online multiplayer because it would come with a code to access the multiplayer, if it was new, it wasn't used, obviously.
Yeah, they were like the first ones to really kind of start doing that. I mean, now it's like common practice, and it's kind of like,
now multiplayer is its own thing, separate from the single player, which is I hate that. I hate that so much.
To me, I think the thing that turned a lot of people against EA was their tendency to buy up beloved studios and then like kill them the second they had one bad game.
Oh yeah, and their ability to just kind of swallow everything whole, and just kind of like their story of working with a Suda51 on Shadows of the Damned, which I think Matt did a video on that. If you want to know more about that, and what they did to like Visceral Games and Pandemic Studios, and
Visceral's the most tragic to me because Visceral was like their workhorse for years back when they were EA Redwood Shores.
They were their Insomniac basically. Just pumping out greatness.
they made like NASCAR games. They made the My Sims series, and then they finally got to make their own original thing, and it was Dead Space, and it was fucking great. And then they
Dead
had one
Space.
stinker, and then EA just fucking killed them.
Yeah, it was so bad. It was so bad. But I think we could agree that EA is getting a little better, maybe a
Oh,
little
they
bit.
EA, the hate for EA these days, I don't even get, because I mean, like,
Well, it's the hate for it's like stuff like Madden and Battlefield are just like the stuff that they use for like income, like Madden, well, FIFA, or like basically their sports games, and then also to an extent Battlefield have just tanked so hard that it just kind of leaves a bad taste in everybody's mouth, because I know a lot of people, including myself, would wish the NFL would open up the license for football games away from EA to let other companies do it again. Who knows? Maybe one day. And I know like Battlefield used to be fantastic, but like the more recent ones have not done well at all. What was the last one? Like 2042 or something? And people
wasn't
didn't
one.
care for it.
Didn't people like one though? I thought one was pretty well received.
I have no idea. Just whenever I hear a Battlefield game comes out, people are like, eh. They just kind
The
of go,
last
whatever.
the last one I cared about was 4. So
I mean, the last one I played was like Battlefield 2, Modern Combat or whatever on the
yeah,
360.
Bad
Yeah.
Company 2 was huge. I remember everyone loved Bad
Oh
Company 2.
yeah. I need to play the Bad Companies. I've heard they're both. Well, I've played a bit of the first Bad Company, and I remember really enjoying it. And yeah, I've heard Bad Company 2 is fantastic. So those are the two I need to sit down and play.
I
I
love the
did
fact
play.
that that's EA's workhorse now, like Dice, and yet Dice had got their start making utter garbage.
I mean, people get better.
Yeah, I know. I just love looking back and being like, "Oh, they made the Shrek game on Xbox. That's a cool place to start."
Oh boy, they made that.
Yeah, the one with the purple cover. That's shit.
I can't. But EA didn't publish that.
Well, Dice wasn't always an EA studio.
Is there like is Digital Illusions like Canada or whatever?
Yeah,
Yeah, the Swedish. Oh, okay. So it's like a different part of Dice, or it was credited as like Dice Canada or something.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I never played that one. I played the other Shrek game that came out, Extra Large. Oh, that's the same game. Never
yeah.
mind.
That's the GameCube version of it.
Yeah, I played that, and yeah, that was
The
bad
only Shrek
game.
game that was decent was the Shrek 2 for PS2, but that's just because it was a beat 'em
Oh
up.
yeah, love that fucking game. I love that game. I played the shit out of that as a kid. I think
So
I 100%ed it.
I remember
Yeah,
that game being hard for some reason, but I was also like
it was slow.
a
That was the
child,
problem.
so
It was like super slow, and having all the four characters was great, but like the AI for them was terrible, and
yeah.
you have all these weird puzzles. And I remember as a kid the Puss in Boots QuickTime stuff.
Oh fuck that! I hated that
As
mini
a kid,
games.
I couldn't do it. But when I played it many years later as an adult, or like young adult or whatever, this is quite a while ago, breezed through it. It was the
Oh
easiest
yeah,
thing in the world. Yeah. I liked when you went to far, far away and you had to do all those random stuff with people, like throw people into like paddy wagons or whatever. Like that was a fun game for what it was. And that
yeah.
was done by the console version was done by Luxo Flux. It was published
Oh,
by Activision.
Luxaflux, I know them.
Luxo Flux.
They make some good shit.
Well, do they still
Or
exist?
they
No.
made some good shit, I should say. Pretty sure
Vigilante.
Activision killed them.
They had True Crime Streets of. They did the True Crime games.
Yeah,
Holy shit! And then Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen.
yeah, that's what killed them, I believe.
I mean, Transformers will be the death of us all.
Unless
So,
you're that one studio that made the really good ones, but
yeah. But anyways, enough of Activision. We're talking about EA here. But
yeah.
yeah, like,
So
but with the whole stuff with EA, like with Battlefield and the sports stuff, they've started making stuff like It Takes Two, the Star Wars Jedi games, and there's probably some other instances of
Mass
stuff.
Effect, the Legacy Collection, which ended up being the
Yeah,
best-selling Mass Effect game ever.
yeah, I have it, and yeah, but I'm worried about BioWare, but like EA. in a way, it seems like they are starting to figure their shit out, or at least getting into a spot where they're like, hey, yep, there it is, PS4 version. That's how I played the Mass Effect games for the first time, was through that collection.
So my Mass Effect story is hilarious. I bought the PS3 trilogy, realized the PS3 versions were, well, the PS3 version of Mass Effect 1 anyways was utter shit. And then I bought the 360 versions because they were like 2 cents at GameStop.
Yeah.
So I bought those.
And they were made for those, especially
Yes.
the first one.
And I started playing those, and then this got announced like a month later, and I was like, fuck. So I just bought this instead. And this is a great port.
Oh, yeah. They
remake. Borderline remake,
well,
yeah.
Well, Mass Effect 1 is remade completely.
Yeah.
Because Mass Effect 1 had a lot of issues with it. Mass Effect 2 and 3 are essentially just direct ports, but those two games were already pretty amazing anyways. Yeah. Barring the three ending, whatever, it's not that bad. Anyways, looking at what EA released last year, just out of curiosity, the Dead Space remake, fantastic. Motive Studios, please remake Dead Space 2. A game called Wild Hearts, which I know nothing about, but looks kind of interesting. The Sims 4 Growing Together, so one of the many Sims 4 expansion packs. EA Sports PGA Tour, which I definitely, when that hits Game Pass, I'm playing the fuck out of that because it looks really good. Star Wars Jedi Survivor, same thing. Lord of the Rings Heroes of Middle Earth, some iOS Android Lord of the Rings game, who cares? Super Mega Baseball 4, I didn't know they owned those games. F1 23.
Codemasters.
Any opinion, Mr. Racing Guy?
Codemasters makes good racing games.
Did you play F1 23?
I haven't played 23. 22 was okay. 21 was really good.
Okay. So probably more of the same. Another Sims 4 expansion, Madden 24, which was bad, like normal. Immortals of Avium, which I've heard mixed on. Some people like, some people don't. EA Football Club 24, who fucking cares? It's just FIFA. NHL 24, who the fuck cares? It's NHL. UFC 5, they're trying to bring the UFC series back, but I feel like people don't care about MMA as much as they used to. I don't know. It could just be my bubble. So I don't know. EA Sports WRC, like a World Rally Championship. That's also Codemasters. And then the only game they have announced this year is Tales of Kenziria Zhao. I don't even know what that is, but that's Surgent Studios.
That got announced, and I was like, oh, is it the new Tales series game? I'm like, oh, it's not.
Imagine EA publishing a Tales of game.
It's funny how I didn't even notice the EA logo. I just saw Tales of, and I was like, oh, new Tales game. And then I was like, oh, no, it's definitely not a new Tales game.
That'd be like if EA published a Final Fantasy game. It'd be weird as hell.
Well, hey, actually, fun fact about that.
They did.
They did.
Yes, I know. That's why I said that. Yeah, the whole EA Square. It was before the merger, because I think it was they published. Was it Final Fantasy X over here?
They did 8, 9, 10. Basically, all the PS1 era games after so Sony published the first couple when they first started making PlayStation games. That's why 7 has the Sony logo on it.
Yep.
And I believe the first Bushido Blade also does. There was one other that has the Sony logo, but all the ones after that just have the Squaresoft logo, those are published by Square EA.
Yep. And then did Square publish any EA stuff in Japan? Probably not.
I don't know.
There's probably no need to do that. But yeah, the whole Square EA, that was before the merger. And but that's when Square was kind of not in a good financial state, I think.
They were doing okay. They just didn't really have the infrastructure to really distribute over here.
Well, and Spirits Within really hurt them.
That's what put them in the toilet.
Yeah. So for a couple years, but they climbed out of it. And
they had a little Disney game that did pretty well or something like that.
Yeah, and some game with some laughing blonde kid, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hold on, but anyways. Yeah, somehow Madden gets 60s on Metacritic. I have no idea how. Probably a little bit of this. But yeah, Immortals of Avium. I think our friend Chris from a novel console played it, so you'd have to ask him. I've heard mixed. Some people like it, some people don't. I don't know. It just seems like one of those games you look at it, you're like, I don't know about this, and having the EA logo doesn't really help.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but
You know what I
but
think's part of EA's turnaround recently?
what's that?
They brought back
Respawn?
that and also they brought back the full Electronic Arts branding again.
Yeah, they're trying to look more what's the word? I'm trying to look for more official, maybe. I don't know.
There's an occasional logo you'll see from them that it just says Electronic Arts and it has some generic shapes in the background. And at first I saw them like that's a weird logo. Then I realized, oh, they're referencing the original logo.
The square, circle, triangle.
Yeah, the one that
Yeah.
like everyone loves and remembers.
Yeah, but I don't think they'll ever get back to that way they used to be because as we
No,
know,
the
EA
bubble's
was
too iconic now.
well as we know, EA was when it first started, the whole idea was Electronic Arts, like let's let a bunch of like indie creators do a bunch of weird stuff, because a lot of the early EA output is just like weird stuff, but they've gotten too big and too corporate and too like mainstream successful that I don't think they could ever go back to that. Even if with the whole EA Originals line that they're doing to try to maybe go a little bit more in that direction, like propping up some games like an Immortals of Avium, which I think is a good thing for them to do. And I hope they end up doing more of it. And then like stuff like It Takes Two as well. So
Yeah.
I hope they continue to do more of that because I think that's good for the industry and good for EA. It helps them look better, like hey, propping up these little games.
It's
So
funny, like EA when you think about that whole like idea of like EA being kind of like this whole like non-traditional back in the day studio that would do wacky and off the cuff kind of things different from the rest of the industry. It kind of makes sense when you consider EA was famously founded by Trip Hawkins, who, as we all know, went on to form 3DO, which was basically all about being non-traditional and off the
yeah,
cuff. So you can
exactly.
tell
So
he had a vision to him. I think his problem was he couldn't because I know for a while he wanted to run both, and then he kind of was forced out of EA to focus on 3DO.
yeah,
But yeah, EA 41 years ago, 1982.
yeah. They've always kind of been there. Well, it's the same year the album Signals by Rush came out.
Mm-hmm.
Great album.
It's funny, like old EA games are interesting to me too because they're so all over the place. Like one of the oldest ones I have on hand is actually this little gem right here,
Rings of Power, developed by
Naughty Dog.
yeah.
You press a code on the intro, you see some boob.
No Man is an Island. Yeah. In
And
fact,
also,
do you know the first game EA ever like published or the first game credited to EA?
I don't off the top of my head. What would
Well,
that be?
I have it here if you're curious. It's Archon, The Light and the Dark, and it's basically a chess-like game.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's built to be like chess, but I guess it has its own set of rules, and it's like no one's a good just fucking chess, man. I ain't
Yeah.
gonna like so many people complain about chess being difficult, and I don't think it's that difficult.
It's just a puzzle game once you really strategy puzzle game when you really get down to it. I'm just not particularly good at chess.
Fair enough. I'm okay. I'm not bad.
So fun thing about EA on the Genesis, like do you know the famous story about these cartridges?
Yes, I do. For our audio listeners, he's holding up the famous EA Sega carts because the story basically is EA did not like the royalty amounts that Sega was offering for their games, and EA went and complained to him about it, saying, "Hey, we want more money." And Sega said, "Well, fuck you. What are you gonna do? Reverse engineer our console and make your own cartridges for it?" And EA went, "That's a great idea." And they did. And Sega got really upset. And Sega went to them and said, "Okay, how much do you want?" So that they could officially say, I think the first handful were not official, but they eventually became official.
Yeah. It's hilarious too that like when you think about the famous Atari Tengen like Nintendo story where Tengen couldn't figure out how to re-engineer the chip, so they just legit stole it from the copyright office.
Which
Meanwhile,
is
EA,
awesome. That was so awesome they did that.
yeah, and then tried to lie about it despite the fact that it was clearly a copy paste job.
Yeah, it's a case of like Nintendo suing somebody and being like, they actually have a case here. Like it's not them being petty assholes like normal. This is legit. But
The
they
worst
didn't
part
win
about
that. But they didn't win that case, did they?
Nintendo did it in the end. Tengen
Okay.
lost because that's why Tetris Tengen Tetris is so. Well, actually, no, there. Tengen
There's
Tet,
there's
Tet
Tengen Tetris and then Nintendo Tetris.
yes,
But that's more connected to like
the
Tetris having
Tetris
weird
thing.
rights issues back in the day.
Nintendo had the exclusive rights to Tetris for the U.S. anyways. So
The console rights, but not the arcade
console,
rights. There's the whole gaming historian video on it. If anybody doesn't know, gaming
yeah,
historian did a whole fantastic video on the history of Tetris. Well worth a watch.
yes, that is one of the better ones. I believe what happened was like Tengen lost and had to officially take their cartridges, their third-party cartridges, off the market, and that's why Tengen Games immediately went over to Sega after because they were done with Nintendo. But by then the code had been cracked, so like all the third party companies were just flooding in at that point.
Yes, yes, my favorite wisdom tree.
Yeah,
Bible games. Actually, we had a Tengen cart when we had our NES. I think it was RBI Baseball 3 for the NES. It was the weird Tengen cart. And as a kid, I was like, that's a weird looking cart, you know?
yeah,
But weirdly, I kind of liked it more than the original ones. I thought it was like easier to get in the NES and pull it out than the other ones.
yeah.
I
They
don't know.
Tengen honestly Tengen did a pretty good job. I mean, Atari Games were a really good company back in the day. Like people give Atari shit, but Atari Games, the games part, not Corp. Corp was kind of a shit show, but Games actually was a pretty strong company. They just made some poor business decisions.
Yeah.
But going back to EA now, like EA is EA is interesting to me because they've been around for like they never released anything for the NES, did they?
No, because they started doing just basically computer stuff like
Yes.
Amiga, Apple II, Atari, Commodore, a couple Atari 7800 games actually. What on one? Dr. J versus Larry Bird. Um, yeah,
Yeah, because I believe
I'm not
first
seeing anything Nintendo.
because I believe their first console appearance was the Genesis because they had that partnership with
Well, the
Sega.
Atari 7800.
Oh no, yeah, that's true. Forgot about that.
Yeah, the ZX Spectrum. They made a game for the ZX Spectrum. The Bard's Tale, which
Yeah.
still exists, I think, or at least there's like that compilation of them or something.
Yeah, you can find like certain ones. They Naughty Dog actually made a prequel to Rings of Power called Keep the Thief. That was
Yeah,
PC only. Um, I believe the story Jason Rubin says is that they went to EA and basically they got offered this contract to make like 2 games for the Genesis, and they just gave them a shit ton of money, and they were like, "Cool, thanks." They did 2 games, and then went off
nice,
to eventually partner with Universal.
nice. Yeah, their first Sega Genesis release, according to the old Wikipedia, is a game called Starflight, May 15th, 1991. So yeah, they completely skipped the NES. My guess is probably they didn't like the the royalty money
Yeah,
issues with Nintendo carts, which to be fair, just about every other company hated it at the time anyway. So I had like Ultra Games and all these weird
yeah,
affiliates for like Konami and Capcom appearing. And by the Super Nintendo, Nintendo got rid of it because it was
yeah,
just there was just so much BS that they loosened up a little bit. And one of the things that helped Sega at the start was them being looser than Nintendo with this, like with the royalty stuff and just kind of letting companies make however many games they wanted to make for it, which attracted a company like EA, a budding PC developer who were wanting to get into the console space, probably because they saw it was growing and was probably the more popular gaming platform at the time than PC.
yeah. And it's interesting to me because like EA's time on the Genesis, they made a lot of really cool games, but they always that era of EA is like probably the most like kind of forgettable for me. Like to me, like the point where they really came in was during like the PS1 Saturn N64 era.
I could see that, though. I think it's you're not as big into the sports games as say, someone like me. So growing up with the Genesis, we had a bunch of EA stuff.
Hmm.
EA Sports, it's in the game, was burned into my brain from an early age and has never gone anywhere. Because that's basically for most Genesis libraries, I imagine a third of it was sports games. And
Yeah,
and they kind of built their reputation based on that. I mean,
yeah,
there were originals as well for the Genesis, but most people
yeah.
know them for Madden, NHL, and probably a few others that I'm forgetting at the moment.
This gem got its start on the Genesis. Not this one in particular,
Oh
but the
yeah,
series itself started on the Genesis.
that's right. Good old Road Rash, the
Yeah,
the current the current king of the game library.
yeah. It still hasn't been surpassed yet, even by its more successful in hindsight successor.
Yeah, let's see.
The
Oh,
reason I
they
said like,
they oh they did make a game for the NES,
did they?
The Immortal,
Huh?
which is on the NSO.
Oh, really? I have to go look into that.
Yeah, yeah, and the NES one. So, haha, they didn't completely forego the NES. I just had to scroll down enough.
Yeah. See,
Yeah, they were doing stuff like Centurion, Defender of Rome, like a lot of strategy turn-based stuff as well. Probably because PC, and I imagine like Civilization was big at the time, and they eventually did the Command and Conquer series. So, which
they
I think people tend to forget that's EA.
mm, they published a lot too. Like
Oh
especially like
yeah.
during the PS1 era in particular. Like I always think like they did like the Soviet Strike, Nuclear Strike games,
Hmm.
all those racers. Like one game in particular from my childhood that I always remember is this little gem right here.
Hot Wheels
Tur-
Turbo
Race,
Challenge?
Turbo Racing.
Turbo Racing. Okay.
I always remember it's a fun little kart racer. It's got all like the original old school Hot Wheels in it. And I always remember because the startup introduction is literally fueled by Metallica. And
Like is it like they licensed the song?
oh yeah, it literally it's like you start the game, it's like give me fuel, give me five, give me that which I desire. And it just like goes through that and like boom.
Jabba jabba da. Ooh, yeah. Yeah, good
And the
stuff.
whole this game is a classic like like arcade style racer. There's tons of secret like pathways and all the tracks. A whole bunch of crazy stuff. I think EA actually made this one too. I don't see a
Yeah.
developer.
Cause they started as a publisher. They didn't become a developer until later.
Hmm.
If I'm correct on that.
Another forgotten gem that EA made on the PlayStation is a little game called Sledstorm.
So, well, they have so many games. It's easy for little random games like that to slip through the cracks.
You wouldn't think a snowmobile racer would be really good, but this game is fucking great.
I believe it, man. It,
They
it
like
was that it was that era of extreme sports games, and there were so many that it's not surprising that there's like, oh, that one's pretty solid. But a surprising amount of EA games are solid. You know,
they also made. I mean, we talked about it previously in the Need for Speed episode, but like Need for Speed still was going on. I finally picked up this one.
nice, nice. For some reason, the 360 version of that's expensive.
Yeah, I mean,
I,
this was like 50.
yeah, it must be. I think you said it must be a nostalgia thing, and I think you're right.
Yeah, like Need for Speed is like an iconic series. Most Wanted's like the one that people really fondly look back on for whatever
Oh
reason.
yeah, yeah. So I don't know. Maybe you'll have to let us know.
And also, you can't talk about EA without mentioning quite possibly one of the biggest money makers they ever made, and that's
The Sims, good old The Sims. I grew up with the original on PC.
Sims 2 was the
Played
one I played the most of, I think,
y-
back in the day.
yeah, we had Sims 1, and like the soundtrack is burned into my brain, and like I've never been a fan of these type of games, but yet I put a lot of time into The Sims. Probably because it was such a unique concept, you know?
It's
And
a crazy game. Like the things you're basically simulating life, but you can also ruin their lives at the same time. You're basically playing God. It's an interesting idea.
like I spent most of my time decorating people's houses, you know. So
I think
that song, the do 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 do, the whole soundtrack's on Spotify, and I highly recommend people listen to it. It is fantastic. Like there are some tunes that go way harder than they need to, but it's so good.
like another like in Sims 2, like I think I've talked to a bunch of players and like everybody did this, which leads me to believe people like are just kind of a little sociopathic at times. But
A
it
little.
was the story about how everyone had a death house, and it was just a house spread that you dedicated to killing Sims.
I didn't have that.
No,
No, I must
I
not
knew
be
a
a
few people.
sociopath.
Well, it's just so fun to let them swim in the pool and get rid of the ladder and just watch them struggle to figure out what to do.
I just never thought about that, I guess. It's
No,
like also with Roller Coaster Tycoon, I never made incomplete coasters to watch people die. That just thought never occurred to me, you know.
no.
I
See,
must be the weirdo. I don't want people to die.
the thing with the Sims is like you'd get to a point and then you just like get bored and then you'd be like, what weird shit I can pull off? Like getting rid of all the doors to the house or like removing the toilet and watching them just freak out because they don't know what to do.
I would just turn it off and play a different game. I don't know what to tell you. I just never
Sims
thought
is
about
a
it.
Sims is a weird one. Like some people, that's just like some people my sister Alex. She's really big into like the making the houses and stuff. Some people just like to ruin their lives. Other people just like to actually play the game the way it was intended.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. And if I remember correctly, I think it was Sims 2, the console version, they actually let you control the Sims.
Yes, you can do it in the console version. The PSP game's an RPG for some reason. Um,
Why not?
DS one is the DS game was Hotel Simulator.
Why not?
Yeah, the
And,
handheld
and
Sims games are a rabbit hole of their own.
yeah, and I believe Sims 4 is now free to play.
Yes.
So I have yet to download it and try it just to see how Sims has evolved because I don't think I've played a Sims game since like 2002.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see what's happened because I'm sure you know people who are just like, that's their game. They love it to death. And that's just what they play.
Yeah. Sims is a very iconic series. Like it's amazing to me that like for all the series that EA is like famous for, like you think of like these darker, like grittier games, and then there's just the Sims chilling in the background over there.
Just racking up the numbers, millions. That's probably why I went free to play because they made so much money off of it.
Well, they make all the
And
money off the expansions now.
yeah, so that's how you get people in. And Sims being free to play makes perfect sense.
Mm.
It's a instance where the free to play model for a game works really really well. So because you could just hang in the base game and be fine. There's already a lot to do.
So do you remember too when EA had like would get like random like game licenses and they'd actually like make legitimately really good license games?
The PS2 era you talking about?
PS2, Xbox era, particularly maybe this game right here.
Oh yeah, I have the GameCube version over there. But I was more a fan of Everything or Nothing, the third person one that was essentially the Bond movie that was between Die Another Day and Casino Royale.
Yeah.
Because there's actually an interview on that disc with John Cleese talking about how they missed making the movie that year so that the game is there, which made
Hmm.
me think was that going to be the movie, but maybe the reception of Die Another Day had them rethinking what they wanted to do with the license or with the franchise, essentially what Eon wanted to do with it.
Yeah. That was the final
Maybe
that was the final Pierce Brosnan film, wasn't it?
Die Another Day.
Yeah.
Yes, terrible movie, awful.
Yeah. It's a shame because I really liked Pierce as a Bond, but
Goldeneye's fantastic. Tomorrow Never Dies is good, but not great. You can kind of tell they're flying by the seat of their pants. Like they were writing the script on the set. Like that was it. It was a common thing with the Bond movies is that when they'd have one really successful one, they would try to rush the next one out real quickly. And so you'd have stuff like Man with the Golden Gun, which is kind of a rough movie. And then Tomorrow Never Dies, where the script is just that's one of the reasons why the movie isn't as good as it could be because the premise is fantastic. I just don't think it's executed as well as it could. But then you have The World Is Not Enough, which I have a huge soft spot for that movie. I really enjoy it.
Best Bond game on N64. Don't at me.
No, I completely agree. And the movie, it's one of the few instances where they kind of go into more of Bond as a character. You know, they don't focus on the action as much, which might not be everybody's cup of tea. But Tomorrow Never Dies had so much action. I think the next one not having as much really helped, I think. And then Die
Yeah.
Another Day is just a colossal shit show of a movie that just doesn't work. You know, there are funny moments for sure, but it just, that whole thing was a mess. So
Yeah.
rebooting the whole thing for Casino Royale kind of helped out. But the EA game in the middle, like, it almost makes you think Die Another Day probably would have been, as a game, probably would have been fine. But, you know.
You can tell there was a big gap there too, because then EA also went on to make that awesome throwback game, the one with the
From Russia with Love.
Yeah, the one where they got Connery to actually do
I mean, and it's a refined Everything or Nothing engine. Like, they play very well. Everything From Russia with Love's a lot more simple than Everything or Nothing. That one had a bunch of gadgets and tried to do some different stuff with like the Q spider and everything. Whereas From Russia with Love is more simple. Just lock on, lock on, you know, very more simple. And yeah, seeing like 20-year-old Sean Connery, but have like the 80-year-old Sean Connery voice coming out of him is so funny. You know? And it's barely based on the movie, because like the first thing you do is you get the jetpack, and it's like, guys, the jetpack's from Thunderball, you know, like, get your fucking Bond shit straight. But you know, video games, whatever.
It's like, right? you see young Bond, and you're just expecting him to like drop some like Finding Forrester like clips, like "You're the man now, dog," or some shit like that.
Yeah, it reminds me of another game EA made, the Godfather game. Fantastic game. And they were touting that like, oh, Marlon Brando is in it, right? But most of Don Vito's voice acting is just like a Marlon Brando impersonator. But there is one instance where it is actually Brando, and it is like his last appearance. For those who don't know, there's a mission in the game where you have to go to the hospital to save Don Vito, which I believe is based on the movie. I haven't seen the movie in a while. And if you like, I forget, if you go up to where he is, like the door to where his room is, right? But it's like you're not activating the mission or whatever. You hear Marlon Brando citing, I think it's the King's Prayer. And it's him. It sounds like he's on his deathbed, literally, because I think he died very shortly after the game came out. But that's him. And it was his last credited appearance in anything, really.
So it just kind of hit me, another EA game that's kind of been forgotten nowadays. Well, franchise has been forgotten these days, mostly just because Battlefield kind of eclipsed it. But Medal of Honor.
Oh, Medal of Honor. Oh boy, I have some beef with Medal of Honor.
Oh yeah.
I am. I grew up playing, I think it was like Rising Sun on the GameCube.
Yep.
Really enjoyed it at the time, like the multiplayer and everything. Holds up better than you'd think from the PS2 era. Frontline's also really good, and I liked European Assault. And then Call of Duty happened, and then there was some competition, and Medal of Honor started slipping a little bit because they couldn't really keep up. Because if you play, say, Call of Duty 2 and then compare it to like one of the PS2 Medal of Honors, you can clearly see they're mismatched, you know? And I think last year I played through Medal of Honor Airborne. The one that's a cool game, though I think it doesn't really take advantage of the concept that it has. For those who don't know, Medal of Honor Airborne, the whole concept of it was you're a paratrooper. So you start each mission jumping out of the battle bus, I mean the airplane, and you can kind of land wherever you want, technically wherever you want in the battle, and sort of you have a set of objectives to complete, and you can complete them in whatever order you think suits you best. Like you can go more stealth, you can go more full assault or whatever, right? A really cool concept. It's a very short game. I think it took me like 6 hours to beat it. And it doesn't utilize that idea as fully as I think it should have or could have. Maybe with like a sequel, they could have done more with it. Because I think after that's when they did the Modern War reboot from the self-titled Medal of Honor. I've played that one. It's perfectly fine. it fits very well in that era of like everything has to be Call of Duty 4, but it's just it's trying to be more, you know. When I remember when I beat it, I was like, there's potential here, you know, like it's surprisingly more than just a generic world modern war first person shooter, a little bit. But then they did, what was it, Underground, and
Yeah.
everybody hated that one, and that killed, what was it, Danger Close.
Yep.
There was a studio that made that. Yeah, so shame, because Medal of Honor I always felt could have been more. I mean, the PS1 games hold up very, very
Oh yeah.
well,
Medal of
and
Honor
they're
and the second one, I forget the name of, are still
Underground.
fun. Underground, yes.
Yeah, those two are great. There's a really cool, well, on the GBA, they ported Underground to GBA, and it's terrible.
Yeah, it
But
runs
that
like ass.
is one of the worst ports I've ever seen. But they made it up by making Medal of Honor Infiltrator, which is like a top-down World War II shooter for the GBA, and it is it's hard as fuck, but it is fantastic. So I recommend playing that one for anybody out there. Medal of Honor Infiltrator, really
Do you
good game.
remember EA's other first person shooter that gets completely forgotten nowadays?
Mirror's Edge.
No, Black.
Oh, Black was them. That's right. That's backwards compatible, and I think it's on Game Pass.
Yep, and that was made by
I've been meaning to play that.
that was made by the Burnout guys.
Criterion.
Criterion. Yep.
I've been meaning to play that. I remember when that came out. My sister's boyfriend at the time, who I think is now her husband, I think it's the same guy. I think it is. He loved that game. He played the shit out of it. And every once in a while, I bring that game up to him, and he gets like the nostalgia hit that like normies get, you know, where it's like they don't live in it like we do. So when they get it, there's like, oh hell yeah, I remember that. It was good times, man.
It is the most competent first person shooter I think I've ever played. Like, it's nothing amazing.
Most 7 out of 10 game of all time.
Yeah, like it's nothing like. There's a reason why there's only one. Like it's nothing outstanding, but it as a game, it's not bad. It's super solid. It's just so you look at all the other FPSs that were out at the time, and you're clearly it's kind of like, yeah, this is good, but I'd rather play Halo or Call of Duty or even Medal of Honor.
Gee, I wonder what I think about Halo.
Yeah. Hint, hint.
Hint, hint. Stay tuned.
I'm trying to think. Like, I guess yeah, they kind of inherited the Burnout series as well because they picked that up from Acclaim. Because a lot of people forget Acclaim published the first two games.
That they did, but yeah, EA just has like a shit ton of franchises, and how many of them do they still work with? Probably not a lot.
I mean, they inherited all of Bullfrog stuff, and they haven't touched that in God knows how long.
Yeah, like Army of Two. Remember that? I remember that.
I think they own Origin system. I'm forgetting the name of it right now. Wing Commander.
Yep, Wing Commander's dead. Well, Command and Conquer got the collection a while ago. Dragon Age, though, Dragon Age Dreadfall is, I don't know what's going. I don't know what's going on with BioWare right now. I genuinely don't. It feels like
Inquisition good. I really don't remember anything about Inquisition.
I haven't played any of the Dragon Ages.
Oh, okay.
Cannot tell you. I really liked Mass Effect, so I should play through the Dragon Age games. There's only 3 of them as well. Inquisition is one of those games that, like, I think at the time people were really into it, but people don't talk about it anymore. So it's one of those people go, well, was it really that good? Nobody talks about it anymore because it's famously the first game to get Game of the Year at the Game Awards at the Keighleys. It was the first one, and people go, I don't know if it should have been. You know how people are. But I remember people I knew were playing it at the time and really, really liked it. So I don't know. No idea.
Yeah, it's like, because I know the two Dragon Age games before, Special Origin in particular is incredibly beloved too. I've heard
Origins is beloved. I hear people hate too. I don't know.
Yeah, I've heard it's mixed.
The only thing I could guess is that Origins is kind of, I don't know, like Baldur's Gate-y, you know? It's kind of like that. And then Dragon Age 2 is them trying to be more like, oh, it's Mass Effect with swords.
I've heard rumors too that 2's the first one where EA was really kind of over their shoulder the entire time.
Yeah, and then I think Inquisition, again, I could be wrong, tries to find a balance between Origins and 2. Tries to do a little bit of both. So I'm sure somebody out there in our Discord will let us know.
Yeah. And then of course there's Mass Effect Andromeda, the one of the
It's
most confusing
it
games ever.
it's well, it's probably not that bad. It's been patched. Um, like I mean, I know why the game was made. Just try to be a little side kind of thing, even though it's canon with the
Yeah.
story. You know, the whole Andromeda program, which
I
I
love
believe is in the compendium of 3. Like they do mention it. So
I love the whole idea that they had with that one of if you play as the male character, the female character still exists within the story.
yeah,
That was an
I
interesting idea.
I still need to play through Andromeda. So, but I haven't touched it.
It has
The
amazing gameplay. It's just everything else was kind of a mess.
Yeah, well, they didn't have the Edmonton writers, so that was the problem.
Yeah. They also
Uh,
kind of like that was during the period where EA like mandated all their studios had to use the Frostbite engine, despite the fact that the
yeah,
Frostbite engine was only really meant for first person shooters.
yeah. I don't even know if they probably still use Frostbite, but probably not nearly as much.
It's probably been optimized to be used with games other than first person shooters at this point.
I wonder if Jedi Survivor uses Frostbite.
I don't know.
Let's check.
That was a huge moment too when EA got the Star Wars license.
Jedi Survivor uses Unreal Engine 4.
So they've moved on.
Fair enough. Well, it was probably like a Respawn thing, you know. They own Respawn, don't they?
Yeah, there's controversy behind that. Apparently, like there's rumors that they tanked Titanfall 2 just to put them in a financial situation where they could easily acquire them.
If that's true, that is absolute bullshit. Because Titanfall 2 is amazing.
Yeah, it didn't sell particularly well though, which is a
I bought
shame
it.
because it's better than the first one.
Well, you can still play this one. You can't play 1 anymore.
The first game was overhyped. Like that was its big problem.
Yeah. They use the Source engine.
The Source engine.
Yeah, not Source 2, just Source.
I mean, it's still
according to Wikipedia.
It's still an okay engine.
I know, but still, kind of an interesting choice to use. And then Titanfall 2 is also Source.
Do you remember back in like the
they did Apex Legends as well. So there you go.
Yep. And now they're making good Star Wars games.
That they are. Oh, and they did the weird VR Medal of Honor game, Above and Beyond. Yeah, that game looks bad.
Do you remember back during the mid 2000s, like when we had like the extreme sports era?
Oh, are you kidding me, dude? I'm all about NFL Street, NBA. Dude, NBA Street Volume 2 is like one of the best games ever made.
See, like that's back when EA really had like that attitude to them that like really kind of drew you to them. Like the 2000s, like you had the famous like the back when they officially adopted the whole EA Games moniker. Like you had that like EA Games challenges everything.
Everything. Yeah. Like I remember seeing that whenever I'd play the Lord of the Rings games on the GameCube. And then I would pop in Madden 04 and get EA Sports. It's in the game.
EA Sports to the
It's
game.
in the game.
And then you throw on SSX and you get EA Sports. Big.
Yeah. I got some guy to go. And it was awesome.
I loved all like the extreme sports monikers because like I think Activision had like Activision 02 for like a while there.
Yeah, Acclaim had what was it? What was Acclaim's?
AKA Acclaim.
It was just that's bad.
Yeah, and
could you tell why they died?
Well, they made the titty bike racing game.
BM Triple X.
Yep, censored on the PlayStation version of all things. Nintendo was perfectly okay. Sony had a problem.
Oh, we know. Trust me. I go in the eShop. I know Nintendo's fine with all that.
Yeah, there's like the hentai series is on Nintendo now.
Exactly. But EA franchises I miss are Mercenaries. God damn, Mercenaries was so good. It would be interesting for them to try something with Mirror's Edge again.
Mirror's Edge 1 was such an interesting game. 2 was
it is.
Yeah.
I haven't played Catalyst, so I don't know. But yeah, one I really enjoyed when I played it because it was one of those games I always needed to sit down and try.
It's super janky nowadays, but it's still kind of
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, but it kind of the game works with the jank that it has. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like it hasn't aged the best, but the game is kind of built around what it's trying to do.
yeah. To me, like the
So now
platforming,
we call that a learning curve, not
yeah.
jank.
To me, like the platforming's still pretty fun. It's
The
whenever
shooting
you're
is terrible.
yeah, whenever you're required to pick up a gun, it's like mother of
Oh, that's
God.
bad. Yeah, which is
It's like
weird because Dice made it, so you
yeah,
think they would know how to do shooting properly, but they were more focused on the first person platforming.
they were
You know,
focused on making a fun game, and I mean,
and it
I
is
give
a
them
fun
credit,
game. It's a
and
fun
it's
game.
unique, very unique.
Yeah, and then Catalyst is what like a reboot, I think.
It's like a prequel slash reboot.
Yeah, and it's open world, I think, which people liked the idea of, but I just don't think they did it
It's very
that
mid.
well.
It's very
Yeah,
mid.
yeah, but it happens. I'm trying to see what else they do that I really really liked. Oh yeah, the Rock Band series. I mean, Rock Band's still going. Hasn't
They
gone away.
they published it technically, like they didn't own it because Harmonix owns the rights to it.
Yeah, but they did well because they published it as well as like MTV Games and
Because
all that.
MTV owned Harmonix at the time.
That's right. That's right. Because Rock Band 4 is self-published.
Yes, and,
So
and
still going strong.
it killed Mad Cats. That's all I remember.
Yeah, but it's still going strong from what I hear. Like they still do stuff with it.
EA made Peggle, or they published
Peggle.
Peggle.
Yeah.
They published Peggle at one point.
I would say if you want to talk about E3 conferences, I forget that guy's name, but he just went on stage and just yelled Peggle 2 and walked away.
Oh, they did.
And he got no reaction. Poor guy.
They did. Skate. Forgot about
Yeah.
Skate.
Skate's coming back.
Skate was a cool.
It's in the works, but it's going to be a live service game.
Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah. Shame. The SSX, as you mentioned, the SSX games were great.
SSX Tricky is still one of my favorites.
That is fantastic. Oh yeah, they own the Ultima series.
Oh yeah, because they bought Origin.
Yeah, that's so weird, man.
I love the weirdness that they own Origin and all they've done with it is turn it into their online store.
I don't know, man. EA doesn't make a lot of sense at times.
I mean, I always like the story behind Bullfrog, where it's like they pestered Peter Molyneux to buy Bullfrog for years, and then he finally gave in, but he stayed with the company long enough just to keep them from ruining it. And then the second he left, they killed it.
He knew. But yeah, EA, despite all their faults, they do have a lot of really good games in their back catalog. And they've cemented their place in video game history for good or for bad, like most video game corporations, right?
Like the question I kind of wanted to have for this episode to kind of cap it off was like, do they deserve the hate?
Yes and no.
I don't think they deserve all of it, but some things, yeah. I mean, they no company's perfect, but I don't understand. Worst company ever? No, I don't really think so.
I think that was a lot of the Star Wars Battlefront hate, because I'm sure you remember when Star Wars Battlefront, the reboots of those came out.
Yeah,
they were not liked at all, and there was a lot of backlash around them. Because I think people still in their head really enjoyed the pandemic Battlefronts, and I do too. I love those games to death, Battlefront 2 especially.
Yeah.
And the new Battlefronts, I played them. They're perfectly fine. They're just Battlefield clones with Star Wars skins, which we all knew that's what it was going to be.
Yeah, when they said DICE was making it, you were like, yeah, we know where this is going.
Yeah, but you play those games now, they're fine. They're not bad by any means. But also EA had a really bad issue with PR at the time. I think they still have the most downvoted Reddit comment of all time, which is pretty good.
There was also the SimCity debacle with the DRM.
Yeah, DRM, and they were just doing a lot of really shady corporate shit in a way that like they weren't hiding it. It was just kind of out in the front, and when people would ask them about it, they didn't respond to it very well, and they kind of, in fact, wasn't it recently they made like a tweet about like not liking single player games and everybody like jumped down their throat about it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. But it's like weird they'll do that, but then they let like well, I think they're like Respawn is their single player studio. Like
Yeah.
that's who makes the single player games, and then they have I forget who makes Madden. Was it Tribune?
I think
Tribune?
I think it's Tribion's the one that does it.
Poor
Um,
Tribune. They used to be so good,
yeah.
but then they have to pump out like 3-4 games a year and there's like no quality control anymore.
Because they don't have Black Box to help them out anymore because Black Box
Yeah.
got shut down.
Yeah. And there's like no competition when it comes to like say the NFL stuff.
Yeah.
So they don't have to try. And they've cultivated this sort of weird audience that are like casuals, but also treated as like online competitive stuff with Madden Ultimate Team and buying the cards and everything. Like, there are people who Twitch stream just opening Madden Ultimate Team cards.
Oh yeah.
And it's a completely different audience now, an audience that I'm just not a part of. Like that's not what I want anymore. Like I just want a solid football gaming experience, but Madden just isn't that anymore. And there's so many people who either pretend it's good or they think it's good because it's all they have.
Yeah.
Like watching Madden YouTubers is very, very, very weird. So it's a shame.
Yeah, I think other than that, like for EA Studios, like Criterion's doing Need for Speed now. Maxis is just going to be forever the Sims studio at this point.
That's fine. They're making bank.
Well, Maxis is an interesting case because it's the version of Maxis that exists isn't the original Maxis anymore. They killed the original Maxis after Sim City and Sims 4 bombed at launch.
Yeah.
And the company that makes Sims now is formerly known as known as the Sims Studio for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Because like when Maxis went off to make Spore, they handed Sims
Oh,
3
Spore.
Yeah.
You just talked about that, didn't you?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. A lot of penis monsters running around, but
oh yeah, that's all I remember about Spore. Didn't Spielberg put his name on this one? Or am I thinking of a different game?
I think it's a different game. I don't think Spielberg was involved. I know
well, he did Boom Blocks, which that game's fucking awesome. You ever play Boom Blocks?
Boom Blocks was the best drunk party game.
Dude, that game is fucking awesome.
I never played the sequel. I never played the sequel. I heard the sequel.
Boom Blocks Party.
Yeah.
It's just more of the same.
Yeah. God, I forgot about Boom Blocks.
That game is awesome.
Yeah, like
go play Boom Blocks, kids.
Yeah. It's cheap. Very cheap.
Super cheap.
You can throw blocks at the little villagers in the background. It's great.
Oh, it's so much fun. But if you're curious, the EA studios that still exist are BioWare, Criterion, DICE, EA Gothenburg, EA Mobile, which is Fire Monkey Studios and Glue Mobile, EA Montreal, EA Northwest, Gamefly. They own Gamefly?
Yeah,
Maxis,
they bought that.
Fuck. Maxis, Motive Studio, PopCap Games, Play Nation, and Respawn. And then they also have EA Tiburon. I have no idea how to pronounce that. EA Vancouver and Codemasters, and also Slightly Mad Studios.
Yep.
But looking at their dead studios like Bullfrog, Danger Close, Black Box, Visceral, Pandemic, Westwood, fucking Westwood, man. Sad. EA Chicago, like, damn, sad stuff, man.
Yeah. Ironically though, thinking about it, I know EA's like blood total is pretty high, but I think Activision's is actually the highest.
It might be.
Activision killed a lot more than EA did, and Activision is just a way more scummier studio.
Man, you're down to shit all over them, man.
Yeah, I've realized in hindsight, Activision is kind of worse.
Let's see.
I mean, they're not my least favorite game company of all time. That's still forever going to be Game Freak, but
Game Freak with Game
Pokemon.
Freak. Oh, my brain completely farted on that one.
Game Freak's like my punching bag studio. Like whenever I see an opportunity to shit on Game Freak, I always go for it just because I used to love them and now I hate them because they're lazy as fuck. But they're lazy as fuck, and Nintendo gives them every reason to be because their games sell no matter what.
Exactly. At least with Activision, we can hope that being owned by Microsoft may fix things.
Well, Kotak's already gone, so that's already a step in the right direction.
Yeah, they fixed it already. So hopefully they put less emphasis on Call of Duty and more emphasis on other things. And apparently, rumor, they might be announcing a new Spyro game soon,
I hope
which
so.
would be well. We have probably by the time this episode comes out, we have a Xbox Developer Direct coming on Thursday the 18th, I believe. I'm getting my dates correct. Yes, we're going to date this video. So who knows? A Spyro announcement may show up as like a new, like real cool thing, which would be awesome. I love the Spyro games, so I would like to see a new one. Like get toys. Hopefully, Toys for Bob's doing that. They shouldn't be making Call of Duty. They need to be making 3D platformers. Okay, have them do Crash. Have them do Spyro. Have them do Banjo. Like give them Banjo since they're under the same umbrella now. Like let them do that, and then there we go. You know, it'd be great.
Yeah.
There's a lot of opportunity with the Activision acquisition in terms of studio and IP kind of mishmashing. And I hope it happens.
Speaking of Banjo, what is Rare doing these days?
Everwild.
Oh right. Yeah,
I'm interested in that. Well, Sea of Thieves is still banging. People still digging that.
Rare's been doing pretty well lately. I'm actually.
Well, it's not the same Rare anymore.
Well, like the Rare that made the Staper brothers are long gone. But
yeah, the Rare that made Sea of Thieves is not the Rare that made Banjo, and it's not Microsoft's fault, which people like to blame them for. Like it wasn't. Like Rare.
No, the Staper brothers just kind of like lost their fucking minds.
Rare was on a downturn by the GameCube, anyways. Like Grabbed by the Ghoulies was going to be a GameCube game. They like we played Star Fox Adventures. It's kind of whatever.
It's like a average Zelda clone with Star Fox in it for some reason.
Yeah, like Microsoft didn't ruin Rare, like people like to say. No, Rare ruined Rare, in my opinion.
Rare lost their freaking minds. The Staper brothers got up and went home, and then
exactly.
The only thing that Microsoft did to Rare that kind of hurt them was Rare did not like being in the public eye, and Microsoft kind of put them in the public eye because that's just what Microsoft did at the time.
Because it was like the biggest studio they had.
It was that and Bungie, because they had Bungie for a short time.
Yeah.
Although Bungie fought back. Bungie was like infamous for like always fighting everything Microsoft tried to do.
Oh yeah, Bungie was notoriously shitty about that. So it's interesting to see them being cooperative with Sony, but who knows? Maybe they're not. I don't know.
Well, from what it sounds like, Sony basically was like, "We'll fund you to do whatever you want. We just have a few things we'd like you to work on," and they were pretty much okay with that, and that's just how they're existing now.
And all we've heard is them basically say, "No, it's bad. Don't do that." And they kind of killed factions too. So, which makes me wonder how bad of a state was that game in.
Probably not good.
Yeah. So I don't know. But yeah, Everwild, who knows when we'll hear about that again. I mean, the one trailer we have, I'm like, oh, that could be something interesting, but no idea. We don't know anything. So
yeah,
who knows? Maybe one of these days we'll see something. But yeah, there's opportunities for the Activision Microsoft merger. We'll see what they do with it. So far, I think the Bethesda Microsoft merger has been working decently well.
Yeah, Starfield kind of ended up being kind of a wet fart in terms of a lot of people, but
I think the people who like it really like it, and then the people who don't like it. I still am of the belief that a lot of the hate that Starfield gets is because it's not on PlayStation. Though had it come out on PlayStation, I think people would be a little kinder to it, but they still would be like, "This is kind of mid." But I think a lot of people would be kinder to it, though.
I think a lot of it too is just they're tired of Bethesda's shtick at this point.
Potentially, and I mean, Elder Scrolls 6 then has to be something really special.
Yeah, I mean, because say what you will about Todd Howard, the guy is a salesman. He knows how to get people hyped for shit.
I was hyped for it. He hyped
just
me
unfortunately,
I put like 12 hours into it and was just like, this isn't my thing.
Yeah, see, my whole thing with like Bethesda is I've realized over the years I just don't like Bethesda games that much.
Yeah. See, but like you have like Tango. that's owned by Bethesda technically, and they did Hi-Fi Rush and Evil Within and
Well, when I say
all that.
Bethesda, I mean like the Bethesda made games.
Yeah, for sure.
Because like my
So.
favorite Fallout is New Vegas. That's the one they didn't make. So
Good old Obsidian, who are also owned by Microsoft.
yeah,
And
it's funny.
Obsidian's kind of the workhorse, They've been churning stuff out.
Obsidian is
people don't talk about them the same way as some other studios,
well, Obsidian's whole thing is that they spent literally their entire existence basically being like close to death for like pretty much ever. And then they're finally in a point now where they're financially stable and not dying every 5 minutes. So
Yeah, and then they make really interesting games like Pentiment and Grounded and Avowed.
although the game that saved them was Pillars of Eternity.
Oh yeah, not my kind of game, but I'm glad it saved them. I remember playing Stick of Truth, their South Park RPG. That game's fucking awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, so EA, we kind of were all over the place. I mean, there's only so much you can say about EA.
We didn't even really talk about their 3DO output.
No, I mean, we've covered most of it so far, and so far all their games they made of 3DO that we've covered have been great.
Yeah.
I think the worst one we covered was FIFA, and it wasn't even because it was bad. It was just because it was FIFA.
It's because we're not soccer people, so we don't really have anything to say. Despite my Adidas jacket, I don't really, I'm not that well versed in the other football.
I think out of EA games, we still got to cover like the big ones are like Shockwave.
Yep, gotta do Shockwave.
PGA Tour, but I mean, we're saving that for the big golf games episode.
Oh yes, that'll probably be like a spring thing when it starts warming up out. We'll talk about that.
I gotta look in what other games they did. I think we've covered the biggest ones.
I had the list up here, so I went to like publishers. Let's see. They had for a short time they had EA Kids. They published a Sesame Street game for the 3DO. So we gotta track that down, of course. FIFA, Foes of Ali, PGA Tour 96, John Madden Football, and then The Lost Files of Sherlock Holmes, Psychic Detective, which I have, Escape from Monster Manor. We need to
that's
play
what
that.
I gotta find.
Yeah, that game looks awesome. Immercenary, Need for Speed, Road Rash, Shockwave Operation Jumpgate, Space Hulk, Vengeance of the Blood Angels, Syndicate, Theme Park, Twisted the Game Show, Shockwave 2, and then some like Japanese stuff like J-League Virtual Stadium, Ego Time Trial, Shikatsu Daiyaka. I probably pronounced that really wrong. So,
Wing Commander 3.
And Wing Commander 3.
Did they publish that for 3DO?
I don't think they did.
They did for PlayStation.
They didn't own it. No, Origin Systems. They self-published that.
So they published it for PlayStation. That's why I'm getting confused.
Yeah, but yeah, Wing Commander 3, but Super Wing Commander was published by EA in Japan and Europe.
Interesting.
Yeah, and that came out before Wing Commander 3. Yeah, that'll be a fun one when we do that.
Yeah. But yeah, so obviously next week we already said we're going to be covering The Incredible Machine. Looking forward to that. The game is very interesting. So probably farther down the line, but there's other companies that were pretty prolific on 3DO. I think the next one we should cover when we get to another company retrospective is probably Crystal Dynamics.
Oh yeah, we got to talk about them.
I think we should probably wait till after we cover Gex though, because that's kind of their big one.
Yes. Gex is one of the big ones.
Yeah.
And we still have yet to talk about Gex, but we will. Just hang in there, kiddos.
It's coming. It's like the most iconic game on the system for a reason. So
there it is. There he is.
Big smug face.
Geez, Scoop, let's get back to the mystery van. But we got to talk about Slam and Jam 95 first, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're basketball people.
Yes. All right. Well, anyways, guys, once again, thanks for joining us on the 3DO Experience. You can find 3DO Experience on all the major podcasting platforms. We're now officially on YouTube, and there's a video version of this podcast.
Hi, YouTube.
You might be watching now. Those are going to be coming. They'll come out eventually after the episode airs, so probably the following day. And other than that, you can find all of our links at linktree/thebarberwhogames, and you can follow us over on the GNC Podcast Network Discord server to find all things GNC, 3DO Experience, Geek Addicts, or talk gaming, anime, manga, whatever. And with that, guys, we will see you all later.
Bye-bye.